wondering if I'm cut out for it. I'm running in and out of consciousness. I'm staring at the surface, knowing that it's worth it. Can I shake the doubt? I'm wondering if I'm cut out for this. I'm breathing in, breathing in. Break through the wall. All I've ever known, one face of stone. Break through what I knew and go. Changing what I long for is how I will become more. Break through the wall. All I've ever known, one face of stone. Break through what I knew and go. Changing what I long for is how I will become mortified underneath the surfaces. It doesn't come so easy. There's pain and growth, believe me. I'm wondering, will I turn out from this? Breathing in, breathing in. Time and space, we will be found. Everything is on its way. We are the sound, a symphony of time and space. We will be found. Everything is on its way. We are the sound, a symphony storm, clouds raging deep within. The Prince of Peace came bursting through the wind. The violent sky held its breath, and in your light I found rest. Tearing through the night, riding on the storm, staring down the fight. My eyes found yours, shining like the sun, striding through my fear. The Prince of Peace met me there. You heard my prayer. Hope like the sunlight piercing through the dark. The Prince of Peace came and broke into my heart. Violent skies, the empty grave, and in your light I found grace. Tearing through the night, riding on the storm, staring down the fight. My eyes found yours, shining like the sun, striding through my fear. Be still, my heart, and my soul will ever know that you are God, and you heard my prayer.
And it says on your fourth truth, we all sabotage ourselves unless we confront our internal saboteur. Explain what you mean by that.
The saboteur is a self-created part of me that protects me essentially from two things, but could be more things. One of the things the saboteur protects me from is rejection, and another one is failure. And I tell the true story of a college boy. I'm not going to tell you it's really me, but it was really me. But there I am in college, Larry, and I see this girl who's just everything I would want in a girlfriend, and she's just lovely, and she's athletic, and she's funny, and she's sweet, and it took me forever and ever to get up the nerve to ask her out, and I did. I finally did, and to my amazement, she said yes. And we went on this fantastic double date that lasted for hours and hours. It was the best date I had ever had in my life up to that time. And when it was over, I walked her back to her dorm, and we sat on the stairs and we talked another hour and a half. And I don't even remember how I got home. I think I floated all the way home on a cloud. And then you know what I did? I never asked her out again. Now that story makes no sense, except it did to me at the time, because the fear was, she's way out of my league. What would she want in someone like me? And so rather than risking rejection by trying to follow that up with another date and maybe a relationship, I did nothing. And the semester ended. She transferred to another school and never spoke to her again. Never had the chance to say years later, so how was that date for you? And what would have happened had I asked you out again? But that's an example of sabotaging myself. Now, there's so many stories of people who sabotage themselves out of fear of commitment, out of rejection, out of failure. A woman loses 25 pounds, and people start telling her how great she looks. And she can't handle that attention, so she put 35 pounds on right away. And this is a woman who showed me her kindergarten picture. She said, you could pick me out. I'm the one that takes 2 chairs. She had always been accustomed to being the little fat girl, and to have attention for people telling her how great she looked. It's like, no, can't handle that. So there's story after story after story of people who had a chance to succeed in some way, or grow or prosper, and they got out of their comfort zone and they immediately found a way to pull the plug on that. You see it with athletes. They have so much more potential, but MVPs have had that happen. They have a great season and they get that award and they never have another great season again. Right. It just messes with their head.
And I think that emotionally, mentally, we can help people say, hey, you are your worst critic.
You are.
And you are your worst saboteur. Just be who you are.
Hey, thanks for watching. We're in week 4 of this series called Remind. We're really looking at Chris Cortman's book about 10 truths for a healthier mind. And I have with me today my daughter, Laura Aviles, and she is a licensed clinical social worker, and she does counseling for her profession. She sees people all day, every day, and talking about the mind. And I thought it'd be great to have her on today to talk to us about some of these concepts, because it's right in her wheelhouse.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start with the beginning. How did you decide at some point that you were going to be a counselor? Because when you went to college, that was not on my list of things you were going to do.
No, I definitely changed my mind over the years. And it wasn't one thing. It was just a couple of different things. One of the one of the memories I can look back to is I was in a concert choir and I played the piano for them as an accompanist. And we traveled on weekends and we sang at different churches. This was my freshman and sophomore year of college. And we would stay at different houses from the church that we were singing and performing at. They would open their homes to us and we would stay there. And on the ride home, a couple of different evenings, I would just ask our hosts, some questions about themselves, and they would be very open with me. And I just really was interested in their story. I wanted to hear what they had to say. And I remember some of my friends saying, how do you get people to open up like that? And you just ask the right questions, and sometimes you make people cry. And I was just like, I don't know. And they're like, maybe you should be a counselor. And I was like, well, I do really love talking to people and hearing their story and making them feel like somebody cares and that it matters. So I kind of took a couple of elective classes and really liked it and changed the course of what I thought I would do, which was a pediatrician. So I changed my mind.
So you're not a pediatrician?
No.
But you are a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW.
Yes.
But your degree is in social work.
I have my master's in social work, and then I'm licensed through the state, which is another process after you get your master's.
I see. And you work with Dr. Cortman in Venice a couple days a week?
I do, yeah.
And
That's
what
awesome.
other place do you work?
I also have a small private practice here called Lifehouse Counseling on the church property, and I see people there as well.
So if you don't know, Laura's one of our ministry partners, and she has a counseling office on our campus, and she helps with those who have needs. And we sometimes scholarship people to you because this is something that you pay for. It's not a free service, but it's compared to other people in town who do this, the fee is significantly reduced.
Right.
So that is available for you if you ever want to be a part of something like that. So we want to just make that up front. But so let's start with this fourth truth of the day.
Okay.
And it's this. We all sabotage ourselves unless we confront our internal saboteur. What is a saboteur?
Well, it's this mysterious character that we create, usually in childhood, to help protect us from danger. When we're a vulnerable child, even ones that grow up in a very loving household, we have this need to control or feel fear of failure, or maybe we don't get enough attention. So we create this inner being to help us stay protected, stay safe. And it's in our subconscious. In the book, it says the shadows of our subconscious. It's not something we're aware of, but a lot of times it can drive our behavior to do things we don't really want to do.
So it's like an internal big brother?
Yes, almost like a protective big brother that's watching out for us on the playground to see if anybody is causing us danger or if there's anything scary that could potentially happen.
See, and I had two big brothers and two little brothers. And one of the things I noticed is that sometimes the big brothers protect you and sometimes they beat you up. Is it possible that protection mechanism within us can work against us?
Absolutely, yes. Somebody can be really excited about a new relationship or a new job opportunity or a promotion or a risk in a business. And the internal saboteur can come in and on a subconscious level ruin it for ourselves. And we really have no one else to blame but ourselves. But we are very good justifiers. We can talk about, the reasons that we didn't get it or the reasons we didn't want to be in this relationship. And we can come up with pretty good stories to help our own self understand what happened without really understanding what happened under the surface.
Sometimes we say we want one thing, but our actions lead to something else. Is that the internal saboteur?
Yeah, that's it.
And what's the story? I know that Dr. Cortman tells a story in his book. Maybe you can tell us that story.
Yes, this story kind of shows the absurdity of the self-saboteur. But there's two factory workers, and they work real hard, and they take lunch together. And the first day, the first factory worker says to the other one, he opens his lunch, and he goes, "Oh, peanut butter. I hate peanut butter." Then the second day, they go to lunch, and they bring their lunch, and the first guy says to the second guy, "I have peanut butter sandwich again. I hate peanut butter." And the second guy just kind of looks at him quietly again. By the third day, the first guy looks at his sandwich, and he starts pounding his fist on the table. "Peanut butter again. I hate peanut butter." And the other guy finally says, why don't you maybe just ask your wife? I know it's none of my business, but maybe just ask her to make you something different tomorrow for your lunch. And he said, "Hey, buddy, leave my wife out of this. I make my own lunch." And it's just the absurdity of he made himself peanut butter sandwiches every day, even though he looks to see what it is and then almost acts surprised that it's peanut butter again, even though he made it himself.
So we want one thing, but we make ourselves peanut butter sandwiches that we don't like. So
Because
and
it's
that's-
scary to do something different or to do something that you're not sure if you like or not. So you could stay with something that you really don't like just out of the fear of the unknown.
That's true with health too, isn't it? I mean, some people
Sure.
do that with exercise and diet, and this is what I want, this is who I think I want to be, but at 9 o'clock, the ice cream saboteur comes along and takes you right out of your zone, something like that.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay. So I want to shift gears and ask you, how do you think the values of Suncoast, you've been at Suncoast since the very beginning, and you know the values that we address, or we're a hospital, not a courtroom, helping people take responsibility, and everyone brings something to the table. How do you think these values lead to good psychological health?
Well, I think everything our church and our community stands for is so practical and so healthy, just on so many different levels, not just a spiritual level, but a real physical level, that we need connection with others. We need to be part of something larger. I think that's a really sound psychological principle as well. If you don't feel like you're part of something that's bigger than yourself, it's very easy to get kind of just set in your own world and almost trapped there and unhappy. So a lot of people need to give back, to engage in community, to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and to feel loved and accepted. The hospital, not a courtroom. I mean, I think that is such an important piece to just human beings. And as people, we need that. We need to feel like we're enough, that there's a place that we belong. That's so important as well.
And during this time of isolation, do you think people, well, let me ask, how do you think they're responding? Do you think they're lonely? In your experience, how are they responding to you?
There's many different responses, but there's a lot of people that are very lonely. I have a couple of people that have lost a loved one, and they're not able to distract themselves and be with other people that they love, and that's really difficult, to be kind of stuck at home and not able to have a whole lot of support and love that's tangible. So it is. It's been difficult. It's been really interesting to hear everyone's story and perspective as I touch base with people through virtual sessions every week right now.
And you do a wide variety of ages. Is that correct? Everybody from what to what?
Well, a couple of days a week I work for a middle school, or one day a week actually, and then I see all the way to, I think my oldest client is maybe in their 90s. So.
And you have a lot in between, couples?
And all in between, couples.
So couples counseling, grief counseling, separation,
depression, anxiety, yeah.
Wow. I'm glad you have your job, and I'm glad I don't have your job. So,
I wouldn't want your job.
Well, I understand. But if I come into you and I make an appointment for the first time, and I come to see you, and I'm really upset, I'm traumatized about something, where do you start with somebody like that?
Well, it's really important in trauma to be able to tell your story. So a lot of times if someone has a story to tell, I try to create a safe place and a safe space for them to feel non-judged, accepted, and loved, that they can kind of tell their story. It helps us process things when we can verbalize them. And also to work on the hierarchy of needs. It's not just let's talk about this trauma, but let's make sure like you're getting enough sleep. Are you eating? Are you exercising? You need to be moving. Like all of these things give you endorphins and, nutrients, and it's healthy for your physical body because we're tied together. We're very complex creatures. We're not just physical beings. We're not just emotional beings. We're not just spiritual beings. I think that it's a combination of the three of those things. So I try to really focus on all of those layers of people and not just one.
So if they're not sleeping well, they're not eating well, that's an indicator to you is something.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure they get enough rest, that they eat well, they're moving and getting their exercise, and spiritual component, whether it's meditation or prayer, whatever. There's multiple parts to a healthy psyche.
Yes, absolutely.
So what is a success story for you, though, if along those lines?
Oh, it's so humbling for me to be on a journey with people. One of the greatest things I like to see is when somebody's sitting in front of me and they're describing how they see themselves, and it's so negative and it's so in my head, it's so off of what I see in them. They think they're not talented, that they're not loving, that they're not a good parent, that they're not a good friend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that they're being very hard on themselves, even harder on themselves inside than what they're telling me. And there's so many times where I'm like, I wish I could take my lens off and give it to you so you could see yourself the way I see you. And I'm also reminded that I feel like that's how God sees us a lot of times. There's so many of us that we're really hard on ourselves, and we see a lot of negativity in ourselves, and sometimes it's blinding instead of the positives and the strengths and the gifts that God's given us. And I think a lot of times he probably feels the same way. Like, I wish you could see yourself as the amazing, unique individual that I created you to be, and just love ourselves more. So back to the success, I got off. But when I can work with someone for a while, and then they'll come back on a day and say, this happened to me, or this was the situation, and I in the past I would have immediately beat myself up and thought this or that, and they'll say, but I remembered, you know what? I am amazing, and I'm unique, and I'm created, and I'm valuable, and I was able to just kind of stand in that and be strong in that and feel so much more confident. And that is so exciting for me to hear those stories.
Well, do you think people who feel good about themselves are less apt to sabotage themselves than people who feel poorly about themselves?
Yes, I do. I think that you've strengthened those strengths and parts of yourself that you really do like and are grounded in. And I think that helps you not go to the negative pieces of yourself as much.
So a little boy that's been told he's just worthless and he's just a problem and he's stupid, later on, some of those early conversations could so damage him that he spends years trying to create a better self-esteem for himself. And sometimes he sabotages himself because I'll never be good enough, because he just believes these early comments.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it happens all the time.
So I love to tell the story about my mother. When I was about 5 years old, I have 8 brothers and sisters, and maybe at 5 years old, it was only one, the baby hadn't been born yet, but I remember one day I climbed into her bed as a little boy, and she pulled me up, and it was kind of a cold time, and she was snuggling to me, and she said, I want you to hear me. And I said, okay. She said, you can be whatever you want when you grow up. There are no limits for you. Whatever you want, you can be. And why would a 5-year-old remember something like that? And I'd say it's changed. It changed my life. And I'm glad I didn't grow up with her saying, you're just trouble. You're a problem. Mm-hmm. So as parents, what advice would you give to parents in that circumstance?
It's a huge, scary responsibility, but we have such an amazing, important job to lift our kids up and to help them lay these foundational self-esteem qualities now, that you're loved. I love you just because you're you, not because you act this way, not because you do this, just because you're you. That's such a powerful concept for us on a human level.
Do you have some clients that just have no one really to talk to?
Yes.
And you find you get to know lots of information that may not necessarily be about what we need to talk about today, but just because they need to talk.
Yeah, sometimes it's just me being a support system to them and just somebody to talk to, even if though we don't go real deep into any psychological principles. Sometimes it's just a conversation and a connection that's so important.
Well, that's really amazing. So I know we're in a different era, and I know that this topic about good mental health, that many people are struggling today with mental health. I mean, they get depressed, discouraged, despondent. I mean, isolation is, for some people, it's not so bad. Some people really, hey, I can live with this isolation, no problem. But for those of us who are people-oriented, I mean, we're handshaking, hugging, loving, energized by people. It creates a problem for us.
Yes.
So what do you have to say for those people like me who are a little introverted no, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
What? I think you misspoke there.
So what can I do between now and the time we get back as a community? What suggestions would you have for me? Your dad, your pastor. What would you have for me to say, okay, if you might want to do this, it might help you. What would that be?
I think connecting with people virtually is really important. Connecting with people that are in your small circle is really important, and really enjoying those times. I think that finding something that you don't normally have time to do, that you could pour all that extra energy into, is really, this is a great time to get projects done, to start a new hobby, to practice something, an instrument, something that you've always wanted to do. I think that's a really good way to just utilize all that extra energy that could be burned in a social situation, to feel like you're doing something that you've wanted to do for a while and you just haven't had the time or made the time.
Yeah, one of the things I have discovered is I spend a lot more time with your kids in the pool.
I know that's been a great thing for me.
It's been good for me too. So it's been so you look for the silver linings
Absolutely.
behind the clouds.
Yes.
And some of the things at Suncoast, we miss each other. We know people are hurting. The Suncoast-cares.com funding has done a lot to help people in so many different ways. So we're trying to find all the good that we can in this
Yes.
time. Read the book you need to read. Still take walks and spend exercise and do those things. I think it's well said.
Yeah, silver lining is such an important thing because it's so easy to dwell on the gloom and doom or dwell on one thing that we're limited on right now, and to shift that thinking and reframe those thoughts into something that's positive is hard, but you get better and better at it too, and it's just makes you so much more happy and content on a
Right.
deep level.
Right. Well, so in Dr. Cortman's book, I'm going to get back to that, and you know he's wonderful in the interview, and you can watch that more online if you want during midweek. But he gives a 6-step process to keep our saboteur under control. I'm going to mention these to you, and we can talk about them. The first thing it is, you need to embrace that saboteur. If he is like a big brother to protect us, we need to embrace the good part, but the negative part with that would be what?
Well, I think remembering that the intention behind the saboteur is for our own protection. So they're not our enemy, but if they, have their own ideas of what's safe, we need to be communicating logically with that part of us. Like, okay, I know this feels really scary, but worst case scenario is I
Right.
can handle that. That sort of talk.
So we embrace it. Second thing he says, you address it. What am I really afraid of? And when you do your counseling, what are some of the common fears that people have?
I mean, it could be fear of success, fear of vulnerability, fear of exposure, that I'm not really who I say I am, fear of failure. Did I say that one? There's a lot of different ones. Fear of losing control.
Relationships, love, all those kind of fears.
Yeah.
So you embrace the saboteur, you address it and say, okay, I know it. I know you're going to feed off my fear.
Yeah, which fears are you feeding off of, and address those, yes.
And then the third thing he says is adapt. When he says adapt, does that mean stay the same?
Well, I think it means that we figure out a way to almost work together with that part of us, that we bring it to the light instead of it staying in the darkness. We understand it more, and we say, hey, I recognize that this voice is telling me to act a certain way that I don't want to do. So how do I adapt and change and not do that and find myself in the exact same cycle over and over again?
Right. So you try, and you try to change, but you may fail.
You may fail.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love the story he tells of Michael Jordan, who's one of the great basketball players of all times. In a commercial once admitted he missed more than 9,000 shots in his career, 27 of those as the buzzer went off to lose the game.
Yes.
And I went, wow, he admitted that his success came from failing repeatedly and overcoming his failures.
Right.
So embrace, address it, adapt it, and then make a plan. So what would a plan look like if I want to help myself deal with my saboteur?
Well, I think planning is really important, and having some ideas and ways of thinking differently and going to those and thinking, okay, this is what the message I'm receiving right now. I know where it comes from, and now I have to think differently. I have to act differently. And those are some of the things that I would talk to people about. Like, what would that look like if you feel afraid of a relationship? Let's write down some steps that you can take in order to even initiate that and to not be in your own way once you get into it.
Right. So embrace it, address it, adapt it, and then create a plan. And the next thing is very obvious. It's act. Put the plan in place, because plans don't mean anything if you don't.
Right. If your plan's just on the wall and you never even try to do it, it's not going to do any good.
Do you have clients that come in, you guys resolve that we're going to do these 3 things this week, and they come back and they don't do them?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
So you got to keep nudging them. Hey, if you want different results, you need to change the way you do things.
Yeah.
And the
And
last
we're
thing,
all human, and it happens,
I
and
understand.
no judgment.
No, agreed. But the last thing he says is thrive, and this is my favorite part of the whole thing. So, you embrace it, address it, adapt to it. You got to make a plan, then you act according to the plan, but then you thrive. Live your life and love people. Keep a positive attitude. Try and try and try and keep a smile on your face. And I think sometimes it changes a lot of who we are. So I think the last statement he says, remember the most important aspect of any situation is what you tell is what you tell yourself about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, our own perspectives are so much more powerful. And he says in the book that our nervous system responds to the way we see a situation, not the reality of it.
It's very possible that we're in this pandemic, this quarantine, things are opening up, but some of us still have some fears and some concerns. Let's look at them, address them. Don't let panic take over, and create a plan. And the ultimate goal is that you thrive.
Right.
So,
yes.
So this is my daughter, Laura. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And I want to say a prayer for us, and then I want to tell a story which you're a part of. So let's pray. Father, thanks for your love and grace. Thanks for teaching us some things about the way we're constructed. Forgive us for the times we fall into fear and panic, and we just get so overwhelmed. In a moment like this, may the presence of Christ, the peace of God, be ours. Thank you for your love and grace, we pray in Christ's name. Amen. So, I was thinking about this story to conclude this today. I won't tell the year, but when Laura was about 6 years old, as we were moving from Fort Myers, Florida, up to the Monticello area near Tallahassee, my nephew, who was about 21 years old, passed away. We unloaded our furniture quickly because I needed to go to Nashville to be with the family, and Becky said it's too much chaos. She'd stay and prepare the house, and I left the kids, 3 kids and Becky there, and went with my sister to Nashville, stayed a couple days for the funeral, and because I was a new pastor in that community, when I came back, I had to go to some big church assembly in Jacksonville. So it was another day or two in Jacksonville, so I'd been gone about a week. I was totally exhausted, but I left that evening after the last session at 11 o'clock at night or something and drove back home because I just wanted to be home so desperately. And I got home, and I'd crashed at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, but about 7 o'clock in the morning, this little 6-year-old came into the room where I was sleeping, and her mother was trying to keep her out. And she kept saying, don't wake him, because she saw you in there. And she just was very quiet and walked right up within 6 inches of my face and put her face right here. And when she did, I opened my eyes, and there she was. And she said these words, I just want to see him. And it's a little 6-year-old that's been missing her dad. And in those moments, I thought about that story. No matter how fatigued I am, no matter how much I've been hurt or damaged or lost or lonely because of social distancing, quarantine, or whatever, I have good news for us today. Right where we are, God is not asleep. He hasn't forgotten about us. But join me as our hearts cry together. And this is true, my heart's cry. I just want to see him during this time. And my answer to that is, he is here, and he loves you, and so do I. God bless. Thanks for watching.